So we got Dave here from QA1 in the studio. We recently installed their front suspension on our 70 C10. What better way to finish it off than with their rear suspension? So tell us about this kit here.
Okay, we have a really good suspension that complements their front suspension we just talked about earlier. It's actually sold in two different versions. The first one is, we call it an RCK kit, a rear coilover kit. And what it does, it allows you to lower your truck about 2 to 4 inches over stock. It's for somebody that doesn't need the lowest vehicle out there, but wants to take advantage of putting in coilover springs versus just a stock coil type spring. It includes everything that goes behind the rear end housing. It'd be 2 coilover shocks, springs, and all the mounting brackets, the rear sway bar and rear brace. So again, it's for somebody that wants to lower the vehicle, but they're not looking for the maximum in their suspension update. The more preferred system is the truck arm itself. All these trucks that were built back in the day were called truck arm suspension, 63 to 72. Just what I said, it's actually got a truck arm that goes from the rear end up to the cross member and the front brace. That system right there is still very popular in any late model NASCAR. Truck arm suspension was kind of dropped in the early 70s, mid 70s, somewhere in there. Some of the benefits and features on our kit: it's got an adjustable bracket for the front of the truck arm. So when you lower your vehicle, the suspension geometry falls away from its normal plane, the front mounting, into a different location on this bracket, which bolts onto the frame. Also, this bracket can be inverted to raise and lower it on the front cross member. So it's got a lot of benefits and features to update the factory type suspension. But again, people say, I want to put a 4-link in it, I want to do something else in my rear suspension on my truck, but the truck arm suspension is a really good suspension system that allows you to do just about anything from handling, cornering, drag racing, things like that. So again, if you want to go to truck arm suspension and lower it to its maximum, this kit will allow you to lower your vehicle up to about 6 inches because it comes with a notch kit. This notch kit goes on the frame. You open up the frame of the truck. This takes up the area that you cut out and giving you basically more room so the axle housing doesn't come in contact with the frame. So
now, a kit like this, I know with the, you have the C-notch the frame. What's involved in the installation? I mean, besides the cutting in the frame, this is going to be a basic bolt-on installation?
It's pretty much a bolt-on kit. Yeah, it can be installed with the bed on the truck if you want. We've done it both ways. You know, for ease of installation, take the bed off, which is pretty easy to do on a truck like this to access everything. Plus, you can run an aftermarket tank. A lot of guys are running, instead of the factory tank, they're running a tank in the back of the bed. So that's something that we figured in the build of the kit. So comes with all the hardware, comes with X-Series rod ends, all the mounting hardware, good set of instructions. So again, it's a super popular kit, and it's available now.
Okay, well, follow along as we get started installing this QA1 rear suspension, our 70 C10.
Okay guys, you just saw me finish the front suspension on the C10. So let's jump to the back and let me show you step by step how to remove this rear suspension. To do this install, you'll need a good lift or jack and jack stance. So once you get that all set up, we're going to start by removing our Panhard bar and then our shocks. Once you get your hardware out, you can actually toss your Panhard bar. QA1 supplies a new one. Before removing the shock, get a jack stand under the rear, because once you remove this shock, it will fall. Repeat the same process on the other side, and then you can pitch your shocks. Next, we're going to remove the spring hold on the upper part of the spring. Since we're not reusing the spring on this truck and this I-beam, we're going to remove it as a whole assembly. Remove the 2 U-bolt nuts. It's 1 1/16 inch. Remove your e-brake cable. Remove your front I-beam bolt. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay, on to the next step. Now that we have the suspension out, we have to remove all the brackets. There's multiple ways you can do these brackets. Since they're held in with rivets, you can take a plasma cutter, a grinder, or drill. Luckily, I have the right tool, it's the plasma cutter, so let me show you how to do this. Move on to removing your bump stop brackets. Remove the driver's side bump stop also. The suspension on the truck was already slightly upgraded, so they already cut some of the rivets for us. So all we have to do is remove these aftermarket brackets and remove the spring purchases. It's a 9/16. Do the same process on the driver's side. All right, now we're onto the front I-beam brackets. Just like the other brackets, we're gonna cut these rivets and get them removed. Next step is assembling the new suspension. We have our Panhard brace and our Panhard. We have all the turnbuckles and the adjusters. So get some never C's on them and let's assemble them. Put never C's on the threads. Make sure you have your jam nuts on before installing. Now on the Panhard brace, it's reverse thread, so you go backwards installing it. I snug this all the way down, but once we get on the truck, we'll be making adjustments where we're gonna be extending this or shortening it. Now to assemble the Panhard bar, just like the brace, put never C's on the threads, put your jam nuts on, and then assemble everything. Both with the Panhard brace and the Panhard, with the style with the hex head, that's reverse thread. Now for the truck arm, grab your mighty Heim joint, put never C's on it, make sure the jam nut's on, assemble it. Do the same thing on the other arm. With the eyelet in place, we actually have to measure the bar to 54.5 from eyelet to eyelet. So grab a tape measure, place it in the hole in the center. As you can see, we're a little off, so I have to adjust it out. Give the turnbuckle 2 turns and remeasure. And there you go. Do the same thing on the other arm. Grab your truck arm adjustment length. The end with the groove on it is the reverse thread. Put some never C's on the threads, install them all together. Install the bump stop, grab a flat washer, and an ionic nut. Tighten it down with a 9/16 socket. Do the same thing on the other bracket. Before installing the new bracket, I'm actually going to clean up the surface, then paint it, so we have a nice clean surface to mount the new bracket on. Grab the truck arm bracket, and also grab the supply 3/8 1 1/4 bolts. Install it into the bracket, install it into the frame. Put washers and nuts on the backside, and keep doing it for the rest of the bracket. Tighten the bolts down and torque them down to 30 foot-pounds, and then repeat the same on the other bracket. All right, now on to C-notching the frame. QA1 gives you a nice template. You put 2 3/8 bolts into place, and then you trace out the template, and then we cut the frame. Don't worry if you're a little bit off, the bracket covers up nicely. Now that we have it traced, we're going to take a grinder or a plasma cutter, cut this whole chunk out. Now that you cut out the C-notch, clean up your cut area, paint it up, and then repeat the same process on the driver's side. Oh, now that I cleaned up the C-notch and painted it, let's bolt the bracket into place. We're gonna line it up with the bump stop holes, slide 2 bolts in, put washers and nuts on the backside, and where we cut the Panhard bracket off, slide 2 more bolts in, Tighten down these 4 bolts, then drill all the holes out on this side of the bracket, and then do the same thing on the driver's side. Once you have the bracket tightened down to the frame and it's flush with the bottom of the frame, go through all the holes with a 1/4 inch drill bit, and then go through them again with a 3/8. Now that the bracket's all drilled out, install the supplied hardware and then tighten it all down to 30 foot-pounds. Each of these bolts that we're going to be installing is 1.25 inches with washers on each side and a nut. Grab your truck arm mounting bracket for the passenger side. The mounting holes will be pointed to the back. Install it with the U-bolt supplied. Slide it into place. Then install it with a washer. Lock nut. Do the same for the other side. Once you have the nuts in place, torque them down to 145 foot-pounds evenly on each nut. Install the other truck arm bracket on the driver's side. Install your pinion adjustment arms. Grab the 5/8 3-inch bolt, slide a washer on it, slide the bolt from the outside in. One more washer, and a thin nut. Do not tighten it down, and then repeat the other one on the driver's side. Now we're ready to install our beefy truck arms. Before we're installing them, put some grease on the bushings. Grab the long 5/8 bolt, slide it from the outside in. To tell which truck arm is passenger and driver, the sticker will point out. So with this sticker being pointed out, this is the passenger side. Grab the 5/8 2-inch bolt and install your pinion adjuster to the truck arm. Now we're going to move on to the driver's side, putting the truck arm in. Remember not to tighten down your joints until it's on the ground. Next, we're going to be installing the front truck arm to the frame. Before we do that, we have to install the bushings onto the hind joint. And then push the truck arm into place. Since we're making this truck low, we're going to go with the middle hole to keep these bars level once it's lowered. Slide your big bolt in with a supplied washer. Put the washer on the other side, put your nut on, and do the same for the other side. QA1 really helps you set up the truck to what you want, lower, higher. With these bracket mounts here on the front, really sets up if you're trying to go lower. You start with 0 to 2 inch on the lower hole, 2 to 4 inch on the middle hole, and 4 to 6 inch lowering down the truck is the top hole. Since we're not really going really low on the truck, but a nice look, we're going with the middle hole for 2 to 4 inch. Now moving on to the back of the bracket, we're going to be installing our shock brackets. Now the cool part about it is you can raise and lower your vehicle with the brackets. But since we're lowering the vehicle, we're going to lower it down 2 holes. Install your bolts with a washer, nut, two bolts per bracket. Once you have all the bolts in place, torque them down to 30 foot-pounds and then move on to the driver's side. Alright guys, Now we're back on the toolbox. I'm going to show you how to assemble these QA1 coilovers. We're going to start by putting the jam nut on with some never seats on the threads. Slide your jam nut with the taper going up. And then screw it all the way down. Next, install your adjustment ring. Once you have the adjustment nut in place, put a little never seize on it. Put the washer on. And then a little bit more never seize. Slide your spring on with the wording pointing up. Then slide your locking collar on. And then tighten it back up to the top of the hap. For this build, we're just taking the slack out of the spring between the adjustment nut, and then we're just leaving it right there since we're keeping the truck low. Tighten up your jam nut. Now that you have a fully assembled shock, do the same thing on the other shock, and let's get them installed. Install your shock in the upper shock mount, the 1/2-inch bolt. Put a washer on, and then a nut. When installing the lower shock bolt, there's 2 little spacers that you have to put in between the bracket and the shock. Slide the bolt in, slide the spacer in, slide through the shock, little spacer on the other side. Drop the spacer, grab another spacer. There we go. And then repeat the same process on the driver's side. Okay, so there's a lot of little pieces that we had to install on the Panhard brace and the Panhard to get in the truck. So it's easier for me to show you on the toolbox how everything's assembled. This assembly is all put together as one piece. There's spacers in the middle with washers with 1 bolt. Then on the Panhard bar, 2 little spacers with 1 bolt. And then on the Panhard brace, 2 bigger spacers and then 1 bolt. The ends that are connected together goes on the driver's side bracket. So let me show you how to get this installed. As you can see, we have the Panhard bar and the Panhard bar brace in place in the middle location. That's where we're going to start our adjustments. Once we get the wheels on, we'll look at where the Panhard bar and brace are. We'll need to get them level, and then we can make our adjustments. Grab your brace, slide it into place. You'll have to make an adjustment to get it centered in the hole. Hold the heim joint so it spins together while expanding. Grab your bolt, slide a spacer on, slide the heim joint on, install your Panhard bar. You'll have to extend it to make it fit. Put a bolt in, put the spacer in, Panhard bar. Washer and nut. Okay, now that we have everything installed, we're going to put our wheels back on, get it on the ground. We're going to start by setting our ride height where we want it, and then we'll adjust the Panhard bar, the brace, and maybe the truck arms if we have to get the right wheelbase. So I took a measurement from this bolt to the wheel and to the back bolt to the wheel, and it's showing me that this wheel is farther forward to this side of the wheel well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an adjustment on the truck arm, give it a turn out, 1 turn, maybe 2, to get it centered. So this is the biggest reason for me to tell you why not to tighten down any of your suspension bolts. We actually have to take this off, make an adjustment, put it back in, measure. And then once we've made all the measurements on the suspension, then we can tighten everything down. So remove your bolt from your truck arm, lower it down. Now I have it out of the mount. We're going to extend this arm. So we're going to do half, 1, half, 2. Put it back in and remeasure. All right, now that I got the wheel centered in the wheel well, let's move on to getting our pinion angle set. All right, so to set pinion angle, we're gonna use this protractor. You can get it like at any hardware store, any store you want. Make sure your vehicle is level on the ground. Set your level to 0. And then we're gonna put 3 to 4-ish degrees down with our pinion. So let me show you how to do that. I'll put our measuring tool on the dry shaft. As you can see, we're 3 degrees pinion up, and we don't wanna be pinion up at all. So we're gonna go adjust these arms to tighten them up to get it down. So to set your pinion angle to get it down, we're gonna be tightening these bars. Remember to do it equally. All right, last adjustments we have to make is center our Panhard bars at their level, and then center our rear end so it's level inside the bed. This is all based on what your ride height will be set at. Once you have your ride height set, you can adjust these bars. As you can see, our bars are nice and level. They're not at crazy angles, so it doesn't affect our alignment or our ride height or our drivability. All right, last adjustment, centering this rear end under the bed. I already made a measurement from here to the wheel, and it's 1 inch farther on this side than the driver's side. So we're gonna adjust the Panhard bar. Start by adjusting your Panhard brace. After you made your final adjustments, double check your alignment, make sure it's all good to go, and then we can go through and tighten down all the suspension. I was really happy how well this QA1 suspension went together. It really bolted up nicely. There was not much we had to cut out, just the brackets from the factory mounts. The big key factor I like about QA1 is adjustments. You can adjust your ride height, your pinion angle, the Panhard bar to what you need for your truck. You can go from on the road, just driving, cruising, to road racing, autocrossing your truck, and having fun. For this QA1 suspension and many other great parts, go to cjponyparts.com.